Welcome back to the Tiger Rag Audibles podcast. This is Todd Horne, the editor of Tiger Rag, and I'll be joined momentarily by Jeff Palermo, the news director and sports director for our sister company, the Louisiana Radio Network. Today on the Tiger Rag Audibles podcast, I think it's episode 17. Can't believe that, Jake. We're getting old already. But on episode 17, we're going to talk about, Jeff and I will banter back and forth about the Arkansas game. That game was much closer than it was expected. LSU went into it a 17.5-point favorite, and it actually had an opportunity to achieve that spread in the fourth quarter after a slow start from the offense in the first quarter. But the defense kind of, shall we say, faltered quite a bit in the second half and was unable to tackle was their biggest problem. But we'll get into all that when we get back. We're also going to later on talk with Michael Katz. He's an Ole Miss beat writer, and he'll give us a scouting report. But I want to thank our sponsor, Pawpaw's Campers and Cars, Pawpaw's RVs. That's a great RV, Pawpaw, and you can reach them at 1-800-728-CAMP, 1-800-728-2267. When we come back, once again, we're going to talk a little bit about recapping the Arkansas game, and then we're going to jump into some scouting reports on the Ole Miss game.
Hey neighbors, we're not that far from where you are. Make that short drive to Pawpaw's Campers in Picayune and see our Wildwood, Catalina, Sportsman, and Zinger trailer lines and our Rockwood and Heritage Glen fifth wheel lines. From Houma to Hammond, Biloxi to Jackson, and Mobile and Pensacola, we're not that far from where you are. Come and see us.
You're gonna love the way we deal. Pawpaw's Camper City in Picayune. You're gonna love the way we deal.
That's a good RV, Pawpaw.
We got to talk about this LSU-Arkansas game and the Tigers coming out with the victory. And on the Tiger Rag Audibles podcast, Todd, I had said, first of all, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. Do we have to talk about the Tiger Rag Audibles podcast right now?
Why is that? Because you predicted an onslaught in this
game? Let me tell you, okay? God is my witness.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in the press box in the fourth quarter. Fourth quarter's just getting started, and I turned to William Weathers, and I said, he was sitting right next to me, and I said, I'm still good for my prediction. LSU's offense is clicking now.
Yeah.
The defense is going to catch on, and they're going to stop them, and it's going to be 45-24, just like I said.
Yeah.
Didn't happen.
No, it did not happen. Instead, it was a 34-31.
45-27, I'm sorry.
Yeah, instead it was a 34-31 victory over Arkansas on Saturday.
Yeah, and so since you're poking me, I'm going to poke you.
Go ahead.
On same said Tiger Rag Audibles podcast, you said LSU will definitely cover. I feel good about them covering. So I predicted 45-27. You predicted 34-17 because LSU was a 17.5-point favorite going in. So take that.
Okay. All right. But I also did raise the point that this is going to be a highly motivated Arkansas team coming in.
Yeah, well, none of that matters.
And can LSU defensively have the same type of game that they had against Mississippi State?
And they couldn't.
And they could not. And I think maybe what we learned, hey, Will Rogers is a pocket passer. LSU was able to get after him. KJ Jefferson, big guy, mobile. And he created problems for LSU because you had to not only respect his arm, but respect his legs. And that led to an inexperienced secondary in particular. They were caught on their heels quite a bit in the game.
Yeah, I can summarize this game really quickly. It's what you said. KJ Jefferson continued to expand a play. LSU had a good pass rush on him. Okay, but they could not tackle him.
Nope.
Okay, their rushing lanes were compromised quite a bit. He took advantage of it. He broke some ankles once he broke contained, so to speak, and got into the secondary or to the second level, even before the secondary. And LSU simply couldn't tackle him. Brian Kelly yesterday in his press conference is talking about how there's still hope for this defense. And I agree with him. There is still hope for this defense, but man, they need to grow up quick because what they're doing is making, discipline mistakes
Right.
with their assignments, what they're supposed to do, the paths they're supposed to follow, the routes they're supposed to take, the gaps they're supposed to fill. And Kelly himself, Jeff, is the one who said last week, I think, again, we're going to be able to accomplish our assignments proficiently on the field. In other words, perform better defensively. He's still adhering to that moving forward, but there's no question, Jeff, LSU's offense is extremely good. LSU's defense is extremely lacking at this point. Can they get better? Yes. Will they? It remains to be seen. And the real question right now is, can LSU's offense carry the burden and continue to pull out games? Because right now they're going to have to. That defense is a liability.
Let's hear a little bit from Coach Brian Kelly. Jackson, if you can play cut 19, talking about LSU's defense.
And what I mean by that, we're trying to make plays that are really not our place to make, and we just need to do our job. I think once we settle down and just do the ordinary things extraordinarily well, this can be a really good defense because it's shown itself to have resiliency and toughness and the players necessary to do that.
All right, I'm going to give you a half glass full proposal. How about in the spring, Todd, when Coach Jay Johnson would constantly talk about his pitching staff, and the belief was, or maybe even the reputation was, that all they have is Paul Skeens, and then it's just a bunch of guys that are not very good. And Jay Johnson, the entire spring, kept saying, no, this is a really good pitching staff. There's talented guys. We just got to get them locked in. We got to get them in the right roles. And obviously, by the time Omaha rolled around, and even a little bit before that, I would say even going back to the SEC tournament, that pitching staff did show that it is very good. And in fact, became very dominant in the College World Series outside of the one loss to Florida. So could we see the same thing repeat itself here? You got some talented players. Can you get them all on the same page? Now, I don't know. That defensive secondary is, I don't know how much talent that they got back there, to be honest with you.
I'm still, on that subject, I still think Zy Alexander and Denver Harris are both exceptional cover guys.
Okay.
All right.
Could you imagine if one guy got hurt, one of those guys got hurt?
No, I can't.
It would be bad.
I mean, I can imagine, but I don't want to. How's that?
Okay. All right. Continue your point. I agree. Alexander and Harris, I think, could be a good tandem as your outside corners.
Yeah. My other answer to your question is, I wonder if LSU's bullpen from Jay Johnson's team can actually play defensive back because they do need that type of performance. But it's not just the defensive backfield. You've got players, again, like I said a minute ago, that were rushing. They were putting good pressure on him, but they could not, for whatever reason, maintain their discipline with even something as simple as their path to the quarterback. Then when they did get to the quarterback, KJ Jefferson, they could not bring him down. One time when they did bring him down to stop on a third down play, what happened at that point is Perkins got penalized for, roughing the passer, and that was the worst roughing the passer call I've ever seen in my life. And I'm not being a bleeding purple and gold, and I'm not being an LSU fan. I'm being completely objective. What in the world could he have done? He tries to tackle him. Jefferson's still holding the ball. He's continuing his motion.
He went for the neck and head area.
He didn't go for the
neck area, maybe not the head.
He didn't go for it.
But that's what he ended up hitting.
He didn't launch into it.
His arms.
All right, go ahead. But the bottom line is the explanation that I heard was that he fell on him afterwards. Well, where do you want him to fall? Okay, if there's an argument that he was going for his neck, and there's some proof of that, video proof, then maybe I'll accept that because I'm a fair and objective individual in my mind, at least, if not my heart. So, but Jeff, I mean, the penalty explanation was that he fell on him. What do you do? How do you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I've seen worse calls. I thought as I was watching, I said, oh, that's not going to look good. I think they're going to throw the flag, and they did. I mean, that was just kind of just watching football and just seeing how these things go.
They actually thought about it for a second because it didn't get thrown immediately.
Right. But I had a feeling that they were going to hit him with that.
But the bottom line is, regardless of the penalty, is they couldn't tackle Jefferson.
Right. Yeah.
Whether it was in the backfield after they had collapsed on him, they couldn't bring him down most of the time. And like I said earlier, I mean, he literally broke Andre Sam's ankle. Andre Sam was playing a spy on that 35, 40-yard run that he had. So if this had been like last year against Arkansas and KJ Jefferson was not playing, he wasn't a 252-pound quarterback that probably runs about a 4.5 or even less, 40, you wouldn't have had a problem absolutely shutting them out. But the fact of the matter is you did, and I think he continued to expose the weaknesses in LSU's defense, and that's why they need LSU's bullpen to step in and help them out.
Let's hear another cut from Brian Kelly talking about LSU's defense and how Coach Kelly feels it's just a matter of time before this thing turns around.
We've got young corners that don't have a lot of experience, and our safeties have to be consistent. They're trying to make up for some inexperience and trying to do a little bit too much, and they just got to do their jobs. And when that group really comes together with our front seven, I think we're going to be a really good defense.
Well, we'll see if they'll be a really good defense. I think they let me ask you about some front seven questions here. I love, and it's hard not to at this point, Greg Penn and Whit Weeks. That seems like a really good duo as far as your linebackers go. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when Omar Spates gets healthy enough to play. He is probable for Saturday's game against Ole Miss.
Well, last week at this time he was also probable.
Yes.
So I wouldn't count your eggs until they hatch.
So far Brian Kelly's injury designation thing hasn't been
it's not been very solid at the beginning of the week. He had
Mason Taylor probable for that Mississippi State game too.
That's right. So as the week progresses, they may not make as much progression as he's expecting, similar to how the defense is not responding at the speed that he thinks that they would respond at so far. But to answer your question on the front seven, Whit Weeks to me has been
a revelation.
Yeah, he's a freshman. And he's stepping up. I mean, he led the team in tackles against Mississippi State, starting for Omar Spates. He was third or tied or in second after two people were tied for first in tackles against Arkansas. He's having a tremendous start to his season. I'm sure he's still making some mistakes that we don't see without studying the film, but at least he's where he's supposed to be most of the time and executing the way he needs to. So that can't be anything but a positive. Major Burns had 12 tackles.
Big tackle at the goal line.
Huge stop at that inch line.
Yes.
And also Greg Penn had 12 tackles, and that was Whit Weeks followed with 9. Mm-hmm. So, and then Andre Sam had a good game.
Interception.
With the interception in that one where he was playing about 11, 12 yards off of the bubble screen and on the Arkansas's first play of the game from scrimmage, and he just stuck the dude. That was a tremendous play by him, but he also got his ankles broken by KJ. Okay, Jeff and I are going to take a quick break here on the Tiger Rag Audibles podcast. We're going to be back following this commercial break with Michael Katz. Michael is the Ole Miss beat writer for the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal, and he's going to give us a scouting report. And we'll be right back after this message from Pawpaw's Campers and Cars. That's pawpawsrvs.com, 1-800-728-CAMP, 1-800-728-2267. We'll be right back.
People come from everywhere to Pawpaw's Campers and Cars.
Only Pawpaw's Campers and Cities. Pawpaw's Campers and Cars are people. And we're going to let it go for I forgot. Take the whole family over to Picayune. We got something for you. All right. What else we gonna say? PawPawsNicePrice.com. That's probably all we need to say.
Now, joining us now, it's Michael Katz, who covers the Ole Miss Rebels for the Northeast Mississippi Journal. Michael, thanks for joining us here on a Tuesday night. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Oh, we're doing well. We're doing well. It wasn't a good day for the Rebels in Tuscaloosa on Saturday. What happened there? There was the belief that, hey, this is Ole Miss's chance to finally get a win over Alabama, and it just they played really hard in the first half. I mean, they played hard throughout the game. It seemed like they let some chances get past them, though, there in that first half.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was 7-6 at halftime. A very weird score when you think about, high-scoring Ole Miss and Alabama, what they've done in recent years. But I think Ole Miss really kind of had them where they wanted. They were in control for the most part, and then outscored. I think it was 18-3 in the second half. And this has kind of been a problem the whole year for them. But just getting the run game going has been an issue. The defense is definitely looked better than it was last year. Jackson Dart, for the most part, has looked better. But the run game has really kind of been an issue, and they, again, weren't able to get it going against Alabama, and that kind of forces Ole Miss to be a little bit more one-dimensional in the passing game, and Jackson made, he's only made really 2 mistakes this year, and one of them happened in Tuscaloosa. And then on the other end, I think to an extent, I think they were holding him to like 1.1 yards per carry. Ole Miss was holding Alabama, running the ball in the first half, and they really kind of exploded a little bit there and wore Ole Miss down. And I know that this is a deeper Ole Miss defense, and this is a defensive scheme that I know they feel a lot better with where they are defensively, but and like Kiffin said, it just sometimes you can only hold them for so long, and I think that's especially true when you're not getting what you need from your guys scoring. So, and players and coaches said that. I mean, they felt like this was their chance. This is the quote unquote vulnerable Alabama team. You should have beaten them last year. You had them. It was you were down 30-24 with a minute or so left, and you had the ball in the 14-yard line, and you weren't able to score and win that game at home. And I think they felt this was their chance, and they didn't get it done. And I know they're disappointed, but it's going to be really interesting because, man, there's no break. Last year that loss against LSU was kind of the tipping point. It was the starting point, and then they beat A&M, and then they lost to Bama, and it all really fell apart from there. Well, the Bama loss has already happened. What happens this weekend? I'm just so curious to see how they bounce back.
So, Michael, this is Todd. I have a couple questions for you, and I'm just going to fire at will, and you can answer at will in whatever order you want to, if that's okay with you. You touched on the lack of a rushing game that for Ole Miss, and in preseason, I'd have thought that Quinshon Judkins was going to be, an All-American, first-team All-American. Has he been a disappointment, or is it the offensive line that's been a disappointment? I mean, he's still got, I think, 201 yards, but he's only averaging like 3.5 yards a carry. What's going on with him, or is it the offensive line?
I think there's a few things at play. I don't think the offensive line has gotten the push that we expected. I mean, they returned 4 out of 5 starters, and the other guy was someone who started a lot, but they got some transfers, and they've kind of mixed up the lineup from what at least I thought it was going to be. And they've put in a couple guys who weren't in there last year who were new guys, and it's just been a work in progress on that front. And I think too, we talked to Quinshon yesterday, and I think teams went into the season with the belief that if you gear to shut down the run, you're going to put yourself in the best chance to shut down the offense as a whole. And I think teams have really geared up for that. And in 3 of the games, Jackson Dart has been able to save them and make the plays he's needed, but that was not the case against Alabama. And so I think that eventually, if Jackson keeps throwing how he has for most of the year, I think eventually defenses are going to back off a little bit and things will open up for Quinshon. And he has been injured too, and injuries are kind of hard to gauge here. They're very tight-lipped on that. But he was in a no-contact jersey. I believe it was a Georgia Tech week I think he's full go now, so I know he feels better. But and there's just a lot of factors going into that. But this was the number 3 rush offense in the country last year, 256.6, and they have 13 games last year. They only had 1 game where they didn't rush for 100 yards. They've already got 2 where they haven't gotten 100 yards yet. So it's pretty crazy. I think that was the one thing we thought we knew about Ole Miss is that they were going to run the ball.
So you mentioned Jackson Dart bailing you out of 3 games. I'm still trying to figure out why Spencer Sanders transferred to Ole Miss. Can you explain that to me really quickly?
I wish I could. I think a lot of us have been trying to. It was always an interesting thing because Jackson last year, it's not like he was bad. He threw 20 touchdowns. Yeah, the turnovers were a little alarming, but he's 19, brand new offense and brand new conference. I think the expectations going from Matt Corral to Jackson, and that there wasn't going to be as much of a drop off was a little unrealistic. And I think just like naturally, the progression was always going to be that Jackson was going to get a lot better, and he has. And so it was really interesting when they brought in, not just Spencer, but Walker Howard from LSU. When you bring 2 guys in at the same time, Walker Howard made a little bit more sense because he's a younger guy. He's basically he's your high school recruit that you got for the year. If you didn't get one in your traditional recruiting class,
right.
So that one made sense. But Spencer, again, he's a guy who started 41 games. He's first team All Big 12. He's won big games, but he was injured for a time here. I think it was going back to his time at Oklahoma State. I want to say it was a shoulder. Wasn't quite 100% for a lot of the spring and whatnot. But I think that I think it's a credit to Jackson that there were 2 ways this could go. Right? It was either he's going to pout or he's going to iron sharpens iron, and Jackson really kind of shined, and by all accounts, he really won that job. And but it is so fascinating that you get a guy who is a 4-year starter. I don't think you transfer to go sit on the bench for your last year.
I don't understand that either.
It's fascinating.
Did I understand correctly that Ole Miss has a couple of young receivers that are about to break through, and maybe they're hoping they break through this weekend against LSU's vaunted secondary?
Yeah, so they've got 2 main guys. There's Aiden Williams and Caden Lee. They're both true freshmen. Aiden Williams he's an in-state guy, really highly touted recruit. He's wearing number 1 in Ole Miss is a pretty big deal for receivers, and he's got it as a true freshman. He was making tons of plays in fall camp, and I think we all thought that he would have been doing more by now. But Lane kind of told us the other day that he was battling some illness a few weeks ago, and I think that's kind of slowed him down. I also think that just college football maybe doesn't come as quickly as you like. You might look great in practice, but I think games are a totally different thing. But I think there's been flashes where you see that he's about to break out. And Caden Lee caught a touchdown in the opener against Mercer, but hasn't really done much since. It's interesting because now they're getting healthy at receiver because they got a bunch of guys in the transfer portal this year. It was Trey Harris, who's a Louisiana Tech guy. Zachary Franklin, who is a Texas San Antonio, and Caden Prescorn, a tight end from Memphis. 2 of them hadn't played until this past weekend, and Trey Harris got hurt in the Tulane game and didn't play against Georgia Tech. And so I think they're getting healthy there, and you combine that with the young guys. Yeah, I'm not sure how much the young guys are going to get in there with those veteran transfers getting healthy, but I think that the more options Jackson has, the better. And I think they all do different things, which I think is what they need.
Quick question on Trey Harris, because LSU has already seen one Louisiana native receiver come back and really beat him, and Keon Coleman. What's the status for Harris this Saturday? As he's been, at least in the games that he has played, he's been a big-time receiver as far as getting big plays.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was 8 catches this year. He's got 5 touchdowns, and obviously that Mercer game kind of boosts that a little bit. I think he had 4 and a quarter. I think a little over a half, and then he scored 1 on the first possession of the Tulane game. It looks like it was something with his leg. He had surgery, from what Lane told us, and I was a little bit surprised that he volunteered that information. He was, from what Lane says, he was at about 70% last week. He could really only run like one route, but it sounds like he's going to be in a way better place this year, this week, and that's so big because Jackson. He needs that big guy who can make the tough catch and can kind of be that where the throw doesn't have to be perfect and your guy can just go up and make a play. That's what Trey Harris does. That's what he did in practice all summer and all fall, and I think having him is just so big.
Let's ask you about Ole Miss's defense. Obviously, a lot of focus on the offense with Jackson Dart and company, but this Rebels defense has played well, hasn't it?
It has, and I know that. Last week it was a few things here and there. It was, Milrow, they contain him, and then it would be a deep ball over their heads, and that was, with the way the offense was performing, that was pretty much it. They didn't really have a chance, and the defensive guys have said, it's still a work in progress. Tackling has been an issue, which is a little bit alarming, especially when you get into SEC play, but. That kind of is what it is, but I think they feel so much better scheme-wise right now. Like I think that last year there were times when you sort of knew that the defense was going to break at some point, especially against the run game. Right now the defense is in second halves for the most part they've made adjustments and they've kept them in games. The only one where it really wasn't great was against Georgia Tech when they mounted a little bit of a rally there. But against Tulane, they made great adjustments. And against Alabama, I think they played pretty well, too. I think they just sort of got warned.
I did catch some of Kiffin's press conference or media conference earlier today, and I just thought he sounded extremely depressed. Is he always that laconic, or is he speaking the truth when he says the players get over it faster than him? Or is that just the new Lane Kiffin? I don't know what's going on there.
It's hard to find a ton of inflection in his press conferences, so we learn not to take it personally. But I think it's I think that loss was disheartening because I know that they really thought they had it. But I think it's one of those things where they realize that they really have, if this one goes badly, then we might get a different press conference next Monday.
Well, see,
so I think they.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry. No. I was just gonna say I think they understand that. Last year when they lost to Alabama, like that was everything started to fall apart, and I think that they realized that they still have a chance for it to end up pretty well.
Well, and so that's my question. So, did they look at Alabama? Does Ole Miss look at Alabama? Does Lane Kiffin look at Alabama and think they're a rung above LSU? Or what's the general feeling about LSU coming from an Ole Miss perspective or a Lane Kiffin perspective?
I mean, I think that there's always going to be because Lane and Nick Saban have a unique relationship, having coached together, and Lane has gotten really close a couple of times and just not been able to do it. And as you know, Lane, he's very he's outspoken about certain things, and he tweets and all these things, and a lot of them sometimes have to do with Alabama or Saban being the GOAT and all these sorts of things. So I don't know. I don't think it's that they think they're a rung above. I mean, I think Lane understands that, for the past 15 years, there haven't been many programs that have been able to do what Saban has done there. But I think that he fully understands, and I know that Ole Miss fully understands that this, in a lot of ways, this LSU team is probably tougher because, the idea is, maybe you don't say it out loud, but, this was the vulnerable Alabama team. This isn't the vulnerable LSU team. This is a really, really good LSU team that Lane has said is, maybe the hottest offense of the country with everything that Jaden Daniels is doing. And it's if you wanted the opportunity to prove yourself after a tough loss, it doesn't get much. And this is about as good of an opportunity as you're going to get, and you're going to get a few more too, because you do get Georgia later too, and you've still got State, and you still got Auburn, which is going to be a mess down at Auburn with everything that happened. last Thanksgiving. So there's opportunities on that schedule, but you didn't get the Bama one. This feels just like such a big opportunity, especially at home.
I have to believe that with Lane Kiffin being the offensive mind that he is, that he's looking, regardless of how good LSU's offense is, what type of year Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas et al. Are having on offense, he's got to look at that defense and see holes that he thinks he can take advantage of. Wouldn't you think?
Absolutely. And I remember last year, and this was before we really all kind of knew who Harold Perkins was. Like, that was his big kind of coming out party. Where it was against Ole Miss.
You're right.
And Lane has, he joked because as you guys obviously know, he was used a little bit differently. I think in the Florida State game, and more of a traditional linebacker, and now he's kind of doing his, the pass rush thing. And Lane joked, I wish they'd put him back there because he's just so good as a rusher, and he can wreck a game. Will Anderson was a guy that Lane always pointed to and said that's a guy who can change a game, and I think that Perkins is sort of that same way. So, what they do with him is going to be so fascinating, especially since the offensive line hasn't maybe played as well as they would have liked. You have to scheme for him, and you've got two great defensive tackles too. Again, for a run game that's been struggling, it's going to be really hard to get it going against LSU, but. Lane is, the offensive mind. We know that. Fans have been a little bit, maybe not as thrilled with the play calling lately of Charlie Weiss Jr. Again, I think it's a work in progress, and I think there's a give and take. I know Lane has the final say, over the plays and whatnot, but Charlie Weiss Jr. is going to be the guy who calls the plays, and so. Obviously they're meeting and they're coming up with the game plan together, and ultimately Lane has the final say. But I think they want Charlie to call the plays, and but at the end of the day, it is Lane's offense, and he's as good as it gets. So it's going to be interesting.
Michael, thanks a lot for all the insight on what's going on with the Rebels. Have fun at the game Saturday. We'll talk to you down the line.
Absolutely, thanks, guys.
All right, that's going to wrap it up today on the Tiger Rag Audibles podcast. Once again, I want to thank Pawpaw's Campers and Cars, pawpawsrvs.com, 1-800-728-CAMP, 1-800-728-2267. Jake, I'm going to be headed to Oxford tomorrow, so we're going to do a little remote podcasting tomorrow as we dive a little deeper into some of the keys for the Ole Miss LSU game, or I should actually say LSU Ole Miss game because LSU is the visitors. But and we'll also talk to Wilson Alexander, I believe. Wilson, of course, is the top beat writer for theadvocate.com covering LSU, and he's always got some great insights. So it'll be interesting to discuss that game. It's a very important game. Obviously for LSU, who's 2-0 right now in the SEC. Ole Miss coming off a loss to Alabama, so they're going to be chomping at the bits, I'm sure, to stay in the race for the SEC Western title, or West title, I should say. So anyway, looking forward to talking to you guys tomorrow. I want to thank Jeff Palermo, my chat buddy here on the Tiger Rag Audibles podcast. And once again, thank Pawpaw's Campers and Cars. Jake, have a good day, and catch you later.